With everything coming at us constantly, information overload,
Hmm.
it's actually pretty hard to figure out what's genuinely useful, what really clicks.
It is, and that's what we try to do here. Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through that noise, look at some compelling source material, and pull out the insights that might just change how you look at things.
Exactly. And today we're jumping into, well, some pretty controversial ground, maybe. Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Mm-hmm. We've got the text for 5 specific laws, plus the historical stories Greene uses and, his take on what they mean.
Our mission, really, is to give you a clear look at these principles. They can be a bit surprising and explore what they say about, well, human interaction and influence.
And maybe help you think about how they show up in your own world.
Okay, let's get right into it. Law 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor.
Right. The core idea here is, maybe counterintuitively, that being too present, always around, can actually make people value you less.
Whereas stepping back strategically, that can boost admiration, create scarcity.
Precisely. It enhances respect, honor. Greene loves illustrating this with history, like Sir Guillaume de Bon, the troubadour.
Oh yeah, the 12th century story. He saw his friend make up with his lover after a fight and thought, hey, I could do that.
Right. He thought he'd get the same result with Madame Guillaume de Havillac. So he faked being angry, withdrew his attention.
Expecting her to miss him, want him back, leading to this great reconciliation.
But it totally backfired. Or, well, it worked differently. His absence made her fall more in love with him. She started pursuing him.
Which was pretty unusual for a lady of her station.
Yeah.
And he found it off-putting.
Yeah, kind of undignified, he thought. So when she eventually stopped, he came back expecting, apologies from her.
Instead, she begged his forgiveness. He couldn't handle it.
No. So he deliberately picked a fight, said some harsh things, drove her away for real this time.
And then he felt the longing he was aiming for initially. Regretted it for a year, wrote poems.
Begged her forgiveness. Eventually, she did take him back, but, not without a price.
The fingernail. He had to remove a fingernail as penance. Ouch. A tough lesson.
A very tough lesson. Greene's point is key. You need that initial presence, sure, but once emotions are engaged, absence creates a vacuum.
And the other person's imagination fills it, often idealizing you.
Right. Too much presence smothers things. Familiarity breeds, well, maybe not contempt, but less value.
Like that Chinese parable, too, Tian Zhao and the Duke.
Mm-hmm. Tian Zhao compared himself to a snow goose rare, prize versus the common cock, killed daily because it was always there.
His message was, I need to fly far away. Basically make himself scarce to increase his value to the Duke.
Right.
Supply and demand for attention.
And then there's Eisius, the median judge. He became indispensable because he was so fair.
Then he just withdrew. Said it was too much work, interfering with his own life.
Chaos ensued. People begged him to come back, this time as their king.
And once he was king, he made himself really scarce.
Yeah.
Hidden away, communicating through messengers.
Herodotus wrote about it, how this absence created this aura, made him seem almost superhuman.
Like that dervish quote Greene uses, "Why have you not been to see me?" Has a sweetness that "why have you come again" never can.
It really captures that desire for what's not easily obtained.
So the do's and don'ts from Greene. First, you need that strong presence before you withdraw.
Crucial. Then, time the withdrawal right, before they start taking you for granted.
In love, he says, feign withdrawal to keep things interesting. Love never dies of starvation, but often of indigestion.
Don't let yourself become commonplace, and if respect is lost, a total withdrawal like a death before death can sometimes bring it back.
It all comes back to scarcity increasing value, like tulip mania, or how Devine sold art.
Exactly. Create that demand, and know when to step back from power to keep the respect you've earned.
So for listeners, maybe think, are you too available sometimes? Professionally, personally.
Could pulling back briefly make your input more valuable when you return? Create some anticipation.
It's about recognizing the power of scarcity with your skills, your time. Not manipulation, just understanding value.
Okay, Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
This one's about disrupting expectations, keeping people off balance. It can be, well, intimidating.
The Bobby Fischer versus Boris Spassky chess match in '72 was a prime example. Fischer's behavior was just wild.
Totally erratic, wasn't it? Late arrivals, complaining constantly, weird demands.
Pure psychological warfare. Spassky was known for being cool, collected, methodical.
And Fischer just shattered that. Even his weird chess moves were they mistakes. or traps.
Exactly. Spassky couldn't figure it out. It completely unnerved him. Fisher broke the predictable patterns Spassky relied on.
And Spassky started losing his cool, right? Accusing Fisher of hypnosis, drugged orange juice.
It shows how disrupting someone's sense of order can give you a huge edge. Spassky's predictable world crumbled.
Greene also mentions the Duke of Milan, Filippo Maria.
Oh yeah, he'd shower favors on people one day, then be completely cold the next. Total inconsistency.
Kept everyone guessing, always uncertain, made them more compliant, reinforced his power.
And Stonewall Jackson in the Civil War. His troop movements in the Shenandoah Valley were baffling to the Union generals.
Didn't follow the textbook, right? Sowed confusion, delayed them.
Jackson knew the power of mystification and surprise. Always mystify, mislead, and surprise the enemy, he said.
Even Picasso used it with his art dealer, Rosenberg.
Right. Suddenly stopped giving him paintings. Made Rosenberg anxious.
And willing to pay more when Picasso finally relented. Picasso admitted it was deliberate, keep the dealer guessing, make him value the relationship.
So Greene's takeaways. The sudden and unpredictable. That's terrifying to people.
Break your own routine sometimes. Be deliberately unsettling to keep the initiative.
Strike without warning. It's a tool the underdog can use effectively too.
And interestingly, once you're established, a bit of capricious behavior can actually increase respect. Shows you play by your own rules.
For listeners, maybe reflect. Where are you predictable? Could that make you vulnerable?
Could occasional ethical, unexpected actions shake things up, create intrigue?
But there's a balance, right? Too much unpredictability, especially early on, or if you're not in charge, just looks like instability.
Definitely. And Greene points out a reversal too. Predictability can be a smokescreen.
Yeah, establish a pattern, then hit them with something shocking, like Ali versus Foreman.
But yeah, rely on unpredictability too much, and you just seem erratic, untrustworthy.
Okay, moving on. Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous.
This feels counterintuitive too. Surely a fortress is safe.
You'd think so. But Greene argues isolation cuts you off from information, from allies, makes you a target.
His main example is Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of China.
Right. Towards the end, he got incredibly paranoid. Built this isolated palace complex, secret tunnels.
Slept in different rooms, executed people who saw him accidentally.
His fear of contact was extreme. He died alone. His death even kept secret for a while.
And the isolation meant he had no idea what plots were brewing among his own court. His fortress became his prison.
Exactly. It didn't protect him. It weakened him. Contrast that with Louis XIV.
The Sun King, Versailles.
Versailles was opulent, sure, but it was also designed to keep the nobility close, under his watch constantly.
Those rituals, the lever and coucher, everyone had to be there. No hiding.
Saint-Simon wrote about it. Being seen by the king, even a small nod, was crucial. Being absent was social death.
Louis understood power came from connection, information flow, being at the center, not from hiding away.
So Greene's do's and don'ts. Forget the fortress idea, literal or metaphorical. It makes you a target.
Power needs social interaction. Stay in the mix.
Root yourself at the center. If things get dicey, don't retreat. Engage more.
Find allies. Mingle. Isolation breeds paranoia, cuts off knowledge.
Even rulers need to stay connected.
So for listeners, think about where you might be isolating yourself. Physically, socially, professionally.
Recognize you need diverse connections for info, for support. How could being more present actually make you safer?
Greene does concede temporary solitude can be good for thinking.
Right, but prolonged isolation, that's dangerous. Leads to skewed thinking, makes it hard to get back in the loop. That's the limited reversal.
Okay, Law 19. This one feels crucial. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person.
Absolutely critical. People react differently, offend the wrong type, and the consequences can be severe and long-lasting.
Like that conquistador, Lope de Aguirre, got flogged by an official.
A squivel. And Aguirre hunted him for 3 years just to kill him for that perceived slight. Extreme sensitivity, relentless revenge.
Wow. Or Genghis Khan and Shah Muhammad.
The Shah dismissed Khan's envoys, insulted them, even beheaded one. Big mistake.
Understatement. Khan, usually patient, unleashed an invasion that wiped out Muhammad's entire empire.
Yeah.
He fundamentally misjudged Khan.
And remember J. Frank Norfleet, the rancher, got conned.
But instead of just licking his wounds, he spent 5 years and his own money hunting the con artists down. Wounded pride is powerful.
It really is. And Prince Chang'er, slighted by the ruler of Cheng while in exile.
Years later, when he gained power, he remembered that rudeness and destroyed Cheng's kingdom. A small offense, Huge payback.
Even in business, like Duveen trying to sell art to Henry Ford.
Duveen assumed Ford was like his usual wealthy clients, but Ford didn't see the value in original paintings over copies.
Total misread. Cost Duveen the sale because he didn't understand his mark.
Greene even gives types of dangerous people to watch out for.
Right. The arrogant and proud, the hopelessly insecure, Mr. Suspicion, the serpent with a long memory.
And the plain, unassuming man who can be deceptively stubborn or hard to fool.
Each needs careful handling. So, the key lessons. Never assume uniform reactions. Choose opponents carefully.
Watch out for that touchy pride or insecurity. Recognize those who plot revenge.
Don't underestimate the seemingly simple. If you must reject someone, be polite. Avoid insult.
Maybe subtly test the waters for oversensitivity.
The big takeaway for listeners: observe. Understand the people you deal with. Don't project your own reactions onto them.
Small offenses can have massive fallout with the wrong person. Develop that awareness of different types.
And Greene is firm on this one. No reversal.
Right.
Knowing who you're dealing with is always essential. The risks are just too high.
Okay, last one for today. Law 20. Do not commit to anyone.
This is about independence. Staying uncommitted makes you the master, makes others pursue you, lets you play people against each other.
Part 1 is, do not commit, but be courted by all. And Queen Elizabeth I is the star example.
Absolutely. She never married, despite constant pressure and numerous suitors. Dudley, Essex, foreign kings.
And this refusal to commit, creating this incredible aura, didn't it? Made her seem intensely desirable, mysterious.
Politically, too. She used the possibility of marriage as a diplomatic tool, forging alliances without ever tying herself down.
The Virgin Queen offered hope, never satisfaction, kept everyone guessing, vying for her favor.
Her quote sums it up. I would rather be a beggar and single than a queen and married. Total strategic independence.
So the idea is, once they feel they have you, your power drops.
Right. Don't commit fully. They try harder. Stay aloof. Gain power from their desire. Play the Virgin Queen.
The magic fades upon commitment. So encourage interest, but stay inwardly detached. Stir things up. Don't get locked in.
Like Alcibiades or Kissinger playing different sides against each other to boost their own standing.
For listeners, think about where early commitments might be limiting you. Could you gain leverage by staying uncommitted longer?
It's about creating that sense of being in demand, attracting options without getting obligated too fast.
And the second part, do not commit. Stay above the fray.
Here, Isabella d'Este of Mantua is the example, navigating the chaos of Renaissance Italy.
Constant wars between city-states, big powers like France and Spain getting involved.
And Isabella managed to stay neutral, mostly, befriended powerful people on different sides like Louis XII and Cesar Borgia, but carefully.
She even did some double dealing, always focused on protecting Mantua's independence.
Her strength was not taking sides. She seemed interested, supportive even, but kept her distance. Let others fight it out.
Then maybe capitalized on their exhaustion, or positioned herself as a mediator.
Exactly. Sometimes she'd even quietly stir things up, then offer to fix it, like the fisherman waiting while the snipe and mussel fight.
So the do's and don'ts. Don't get sucked into petty fights. Seem interested. Stay neutral.
Let others exhaust themselves, then make your move. Consider mediation as a power play.
Sometimes being slow to choose a side is the strategic move. Gives you time to assess.
For listeners, where are you tempted to jump into conflicts, take sides too quickly?
Could observing from the sidelines be more advantageous? Appearing supportive without getting tangled.
It's about strategic patience, not getting caught in others' messes until you see a clear benefit or necessity.
But this one does have a reversal, right? You can take non-commitment too far.
Definitely. If you never commit, people stop trusting you, might even gang up on you.
So occasional commitment, maybe just for show, might be needed to build alliances.
Right. Maintain that inner independence, but recognize the social need for some outward alignment sometimes.
Okay, so that covers the 5 laws we set out to explore today from the 48 laws of power. Absence, unpredictability, avoiding isolation, knowing your opponent, and non-commitment.
We've really dug into Greene's ideas, the history he uses, his interpretations. It definitely gives you a different way to look at human interaction, influence, power itself.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. Considering these laws, how absence works, the effect of surprise, the danger of cutting yourself off, judging character, the strategy of holding back, it offers a more, well, strategic view.
Hopefully it gives you, our listeners, some new perspectives to consider as you navigate your own goals and relationships.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Take a look at the commitments you currently have. Are they all genuinely serving you? Or could some of them actually be holding you back, limiting your options or your perspective in ways you hadn't considered?
Something to ponder. We definitely encourage exploring these ideas further, maybe reading the full book.
This concludes our in-depth exploration of Laws 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 from Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.